Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Comment Section. That's right, guys. We may be almost 3 months late. We are a week ahead of the Blu-ray release, which comes out this Tuesday.
Nice.
Today we are talking about He is Vengeance. He is the Knight. No, not the Kevin Conroy Batman, although I'm sure we can't go mentioning Batman without Kevin Conroy, who is now going to be also comic book writer Kevin Conroy. That's
nice.
right.
That's
because,
right.
Did you hear about this?
I did, I think.
Yes, Kevin Conroy is going to write a story for DC's Pride issue. I think it's called Batman and Me or something, which I hope, because when the Batman The Adventures Continue book came out, he did like a read-along thing. I hope, well, first of all, I hope he has Batman in it, because otherwise I'll be a little disappointed.
Yeah,
but two,
Batman and Me.
I hope he does a read along on Instagram or something. Because he did it where he voiced all the characters, and I never knew how much I always wanted to hear Kevin Conroy in his deep voice perform as Jimmy Olsen.
He should read audiobooks.
He should.
Just any audiobook.
Did you see the video that came out earlier this week? For the WB multiverse thing?
No.
I can go to my grave happy. I feel a little bit complete now, knowing I saw
that's good
Kevin Conroy's Batman. And again, I don't know if it would have meant as much if it wasn't Kevin Conroy, but it was. So that even adds an extra bit of Meet Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and Bugs Bunny. I was just like, wow. And Bugs Bunny tried to throw a pie at Batman, but Shaggy got in the middle. I was just like, yes, we finally got there in my lifetime.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I don't know. It's for a video game, which thank God it's not for a movie, because otherwise it'd be like, ugh.
Yeah.
But like, although I heard a similar thing, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, movie that looks like absolute garbage, is getting pretty good reviews. So
interesting.
Yes. So that might be something to think about.
Okay.
Not as a special though, just as something to watch. I don't think we need to do a whole special on Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
There's no precedent for that.
No.
That would be so weird. Episode 100. Chippendale Rescue.
Yes.
I literally, like, that's one thing we always have. We start out with, like, we grew up with it. We have stories about it. There's nothing for me there.
Sometimes some crimes go slipping through the cracks, but these two gumshoes are picking up the slack. It's no case too big. No case too small. When you need help, just call Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
Yeah.
I actually didn't start watching it until like 2009 or something.
I did see episodes of it as a kid.
Yeah, I like it. Like, I don't like it as much as like DuckTales or Goof Troop, but I still like it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We recently had a new Batman movie in theaters. That's right.
That's right.
Now, during the course of this show, we've had Batman appear in Justice League, and we had young Bruce Wayne appear in the Joker movie. We also had Snyder Cut, but we haven't had a true proper Batman solo movie since 2012, which I honestly, thank God we didn't have this show when that movie came out.
Yeah.
Because right now I'd be like, Chris, I know it's been 10 years later, but I'm sorry for the things I said. Some of them were uncalled for. I'm sure your mother's not a whore, and she didn't drink when she was pregnant with you. I'm sorry about that. But
yeah, you'd have some apologizing to do for sure.
Yes, but we are here, and just so everyone knows, I said that in jest, okay? But today we're going to talk about the newest iteration of the Batman, actually called The Batman. That's right. Also the name of the 2000s animated series. But yes, so we're going to talk about the Batman. We haven't really talked about the movie that much.
I think we've avoided it for sure.
Yes.
Because
so
we know we have this.
Did you see it in theaters or on HBO Max?
This movie cycle was the thing that kind of taught me I just really hate going to the movie theater. Like it's just not something I like to do. And as soon as I heard it was coming out streaming soon, I was like, never mind, I'm not going. And I waited until it came out on streaming. So yes,
honestly, that was such a stupid decision by Warner Brothers to put it out that fast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an exact reason why that was. They did not get box office money from me because it was coming out on streaming.
So there was the guy in charge of Warner Media, Jason Kilar. He was the one who kind of was the whole, we're going to put everything on HBO Max.
Yeah. And
this was kind of his last ditch thing he did. Like, hey, I'm going to be fired anyway, even though he quit the day before he was going to get fired. But so he can hang his head up in pride and be like, I chose to leave. But the last thing he did was like, oh, let's just put on HBO Max. And well, we know what happened. He's no longer employed there. But
yeah, he pulled you can't fire me because I quit.
Yes. At least he can't have a conversation like Jan with Ryan. Otherwise it would have been like, best decision I ever made. You were let go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about Batman, but first, as we do, well, that's the next episode. But luckily they're all, we're going to talk about Batman, although I do think we need to shout out something first. Because we talked about recently, Kevin Conroy is going to be comic book writer Kevin Conroy, and we hope, Kevin, let's have a read along like you did with the Batman comic. We're talking about Batman, and it wouldn't feel right, especially knowing the source material, very 70s inspired, without mentioning the great Neil Adams. So Neil Adams passed away a few weeks ago. A lot of people will talk about what was it that brought Batman back to his darker roots, like Bob Kane and Bill Finger originally envisioned for the character. Because, we had the Adam West show, and that was what Batman needed to be in 1966. Once it was done, we had to go back to that darker version. And, a lot of people were just like, well, was it Tim Burton's Batman? Which helped. It helped make him the Dark Knight again. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns helped. But I think a lot of people will agree that what started it was the comics by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. So obviously Neil Adams has a really big... He obviously is known for a bunch of different stuff. We'll focus on Batman right now. There's so many artists who have worked on Batman, and I don't know if have you seen any Neil Adams work?
I don't think so. Probably not.
Well, if you Google Neil Adams Batman real quick, there have been tons of Batman artists. But for me, and I think most people will agree, Neil Adams is the definitive Batman artist. Bob Kane was the original artist. We had Dick Sprang as well. But every Batman we've seen everywhere, even if you go to get a Batman birthday cake or something, or supplies, they're all still so heavily inspired by Neil Adams.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I believe he also co-created Ra's al Ghul, who we saw in Batman Begins. And dude was one of the greats. And yeah, he also created Man-Bat and the Green Lantern John Stewart character. And he did a bunch of Green Arrow stuff, which is why so many times in the show Arrow, it would be a crime what happens at the corner of O'Neill and Adams. So those were the two best writer and artist. So yes, so again, it wouldn't feel right if we didn't give a little tribute to I think the definitive Batman artist himself, Neil Adams.
Absolutely.
Yes. So let's talk about the movie now. So, as we do normally with these specials, because we haven't had a full Batman special.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had a full Batman movie. We missed out, I think, it might have been 2 years. We missed out on the Gotham pilot.
Yeah.
So, we're doing our first Batman special. So, I guess the important question to ask is, what was your introduction to Batman? And we'll keep it short because I'm pretty sure we've mentioned it before. But,
we absolutely have.
Yes.
So, my introduction to Batman really probably started around, I mean, obviously knew about it before that, and I was aware, but really probably around just before the release of Batman Begins was probably when I started to dabble in some Batman, read some comics. Definitely after Batman Begins was released, started getting really into it. I mean, Batman comics were the first comic books I really read, besides Spider-Man, and but really Batman was what I, like, it was the first series that I went and like bought comics for, like a gold mine, and like
oh yes,
because my only exposure to comics before that was just a trade paperback, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. But Batman was my favorite superhero for a time, and then The Dark Knight came out, which has remained like long time favorite Batman movie of mine. And and then I saw The Dark Knight Rises once and moved on with my life, we'll say.
Well, now we can say you've seen it twice now.
Well, I saw it once and then about like 8 years later or something saw it again. So I've seen it twice. But
and twice was too many.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in those years, but the movie apparently it was bad. I don't know.
Yes,
but
can I mention two things, because I fell down a rabbit hole looking at clips of it the other night.
Oh,
I have two things to mention. One, remember in the scene where, well, you've only seen it twice, but maybe you will remember. Remember in the scene where the Bane's men bring Bruce to Lucius and Miranda, and Catwoman says that Bane wants these two?
Yeah.
Why are Bane's henchmen listening to Catwoman? They don't work together. Why are they listening to her?
That is specific.
There's never been a moment in the movie where they're teaming up.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, you know what? There is that little bit of dialogue, because it's a lot of exposition in that movie.
Yeah.
A lot of climbing out stupid holes. Oh, okay. Just I got she did betray him to Bane, but whatever. But also, remember in the big scene, there's that big remember they have 12 hours before that bomb goes off?
Yeah.
Batman fights Bane, and I just was thinking, like, Batman wants to brag. He's like, "You think you're the only one who could learn to escape?" And then Bane's like, "But I never escaped." And Batman, there's a timer going off on the bomb. He's like, wait a minute. You didn't escape? Because I thought the child of Ra's al Ghul was supposed to escape. What? Oh. He just stops. He's like, wait. I know I'm supposed to be the world's greatest detective, but I thought you were supposed to be the baby daddy. That's what, I mean, the Ra's al Ghul's baby. That's what the hallucination told me.
Yeah. I mean, we have a whole special episode about that movie.
I need to bring up something real quick, because I just watched it last week.
Oh.
Have you seen any of Harley Quinn season 2?
No, I actually want to make it a point to watch it again. Because I stopped at the end of season 1.
All right, this isn't a spoiler, okay, but they did an episode, because I love their version of Bane specifically for how much it mocks the Tom Hardy version of Bane.
Yeah.
Because there's an episode called The Pit.
Oh.
And it's where Bane takes Harley and Poison Ivy to the pit from The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh.
And then he's touring them around. He's like, there are no doors, and you are free to go anywhere, because this is the pit where no one can escape. You're just like, the pit. And I just love Bane's enthusiasm for the pit.
He's really into this creation, yeah.
Yes, he's like, he also talks about like how in the pit all beds must be made by 9 a.m. And then he sees one bed isn't made, and he's so embarrassed about it.
Wow.
Yes. So as you were saying, you'd seen The Dark Knight Rises, and it was a bad movie.
Yeah. I mean, after that, I mean, we've lived, for me at least, in an era where, at least for movies, Batman hasn't been my go-to. I don't necessarily think that all of the Zack Snyder and DCEU Batman's, like, I definitely have made it clear I don't think it's bad. I do like it, but nothing about it has made it my go-to. That certainly brings us to the most recent, our rewatch of The Dark Knight Rises, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League, bringing us up to today.
Oh, yes. So I'll just quickly give my little thing. So I don't remember which one it was, but I do remember my two introductions to Batman, because to me they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher Batman movies. I remember renting Batman Returns and renting Batman Forever. I actually specifically remember watching Batman Forever, like, as I'm eating McDonald's and seeing Robin appear for the first time and be like, oh, that's Batman and Robin. It's like the scene, where he first comes out in his costume. Yeah. But I don't remember what it was, but it had to be Batman the Animated Series was my first introduction. Like, I just love that show so much. It is, I think, the greatest piece of fiction ever created, that show. And for me, like, ever since then, Batman's been my favorite character in all of fiction. So those were my two big introductions. And first one outside of those two was the Adam West Batman, which I remember thinking, wow, people used to think this was dark in the 60s. Wow, we've come a long way since then. But loved the Adam West show. It was really cool because we had the animated TV show. It was cool to have one in live action, and one that, even though I prefer the movies, it was cool to see the costumes look more like the animated series. Yeah. So there was that. So my introduction, Batman the Animated Series, the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher movies, and then Adam West was kind of like where it was. I wasn't just a fan of those. I became a fan of the whole history of Batman. Sure. All right, so let's talk about our anticipation for the movie. Which, if you listen to the first, 3 years of this podcast, we kept saying this movie's never going to happen. Never going to happen. I believe we start now. We are now at the 5-year mark for this show. We started this show 5 months after Matt Reeves was hired. So it took a while. Yeah. Yeah, to be fair to us, saying it never was going to happen, it did take a really long time. Yes. So I guess I'll talk about my initial thoughts. I was very hyped for this movie. Very hyped. Because when I look at the trailers, it looked like it was going back and just telling a classic Batman story. Like, Batman Begins and Dark Knight, those are telling him stories of him becoming that classic version. Like, even the Dark Knight, I wouldn't say he's like fully like the classic Batman from the Burton movies or the animated series until after Rachel dies. And then Batman versus Superman was about him becoming the guy he once was, and then Justice League, he is the classic Batman, but he's also fighting aliens, so it's not fully like classic.
Yeah.
So I was very hyped for it. It looked like it was gonna be that just a classic version of Batman that we hadn't seen in a film in decades.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just been thinking lately, kind of a little bit like just something rallying around in my brain lately. You know, when we were growing up, they always talk about like how, you know, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies are separate from the Burton Schumacher movies.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies are separate from Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been thinking lately, because, you know, when we had the Nolan Batman movies, I was like, all right, it's its own thing, separate checklist. Like, let's hope it checks off all these check mark boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it didn't. And, you know, after kind of we had, you know, Nolan's movies, and then we had the Andrew Garfield movies. And I always think, you know, we're never going to get a definitive version as much as whenever we have our first version. Like, no matter what, we're never going to have a Batman movie series that feels as complete as the Burton Schumacher movies, because it was the first one. They had to make them the most iconic possible.
Mm-hmm.
We're never going to get a Spider-Man film series that feels as complete as Tobey's.
Mm-hmm.
But, and maybe this is because of Spider-Man No Way Home, it's like, you know, they are all really just one series, you know? They just reset. They just start over from time to time. Like, Batman Begins is part of that series that started with Tim Burton's Batman. It's just we restarted the story.
Yeah, it's the same
franchise. They're not really that separate. It's like we told the definitive story, and it's just now everything is just an added addition. Like Batman Begins, let's tell the origin of Batman. Dark Knight, let's tell another Joker story, but this time a little different. Or with Spider-Man, and maybe this is because of No Way Home and how Flash is going to have Affleck and Keaton in it. It's just like, I don't know, maybe part of me is just like, you know what? We don't need to have a checklist anymore. Like, everything we have, once that first series is done, everything's just a nice added bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's just been kind of what I've been thinking. So I'm thinking, you know what? We don't, like, let's say we don't get to Joker in this series, or we don't get to Robin or anything. It's like, well, this is part like 9 of a film series that goes back to whether you want to view it from 1989 or you want to go back to the 1943 serial. So just been something I've been thinking about lately.
Yeah. Actually, I totally agree with that. I don't necessarily like going into these with a checklist that, like, if this was the only one, I need it to have these things, because if it was the only one and it was missing that, it would be bad. And so I don't like to go in with that, because like we've already had these stories we've had those stories told, and you can never remove this new version from the context of those old versions.
Yeah.
Those are always going to be movies that did that. And this is always going to be, I mean, kind of a sequel, not canonically, but it is a sequel in a way.
Yes. So what was your anticipation for the Batman?
So I was very excited the more and more I heard about it. I mean, the biggest thing that really grabbed me, going into it and seeing the first trailer, was like something you mentioned, like there's just something about, like, in the roots of this character where I just am more inclined to want to see a Batman story that tells, you know, going against a conniving villain that's more down to earth rather than like fighting an alien.
Yeah.
And I just liked that, you know, it's not in the DCEU. We can, if we want, pretend that We can pretend that Darkseid doesn't exist if we want to. We don't have to, but we can.
I mean, I don't think he's supposed to exist in this movie. But
yeah, the story's got a little too big for me. Not necessarily bad, but I just I liked what I saw in that first trailer a lot, and it got me very, very hype. And it's definitely the most excited I had been for a superhero film. I mean, in truly so long.
Yes, because I think we should say we weren't very excited for No Way Home, or at least I was. I don't know how you were.
Not really. I mean, not only slightly.
Don't you kind of wish we could have had that excitement, though? I mean, it's the previous movie's fault for me, but don't you kind of wish, like,
I feel ripped off.
Darn.
Yeah. And I will say, actually, I loved No Way Home so much, and it does do, obviously, a lot of it's got that, like, late-stage Marvel, like, just character upon character, space, time, aliens, everything thrown in. Well,
there's no aliens in No Way Home, but
yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of time shenanigans and the multiverse.
Yes, you knew it wasn't going to be a class. You knew it was going to be a little different when Doctor Strange was there.
Yeah, for sure. I think my feeling is like, I saw No Way Home and I loved it so much, but it did feel like, this kind of feels like this is probably the best that this kind of superhero movie could get for me. This, like, very Marvel-ified, MCU-ified type of superhero movie. And I think that feels like a good close for me. And I'm ready to go into the Batman with a new era of superhero movie, at least in my mental canon. This is the new era of superhero movie for me right now, like seeing the Batman for the first time. That I'm finally get something that's on its own, more down to earth. It looks more mystery oriented, and let's see where this takes us. So in that sense, I was very hyped.
Yes. So I guess let's talk about our initial thoughts for the movie. And
when we first saw it.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're getting into the actual thoughts of the movie.
Yes. We're actually going to talk about the movie itself.
Which means spoiler alert.
Yes. Oh, yes. We forgot to say a spoiler.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I don't know what the spoiler would be, though.
Oh, I know. Joker appears at the end.
That was one of, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we just did it inadvertently.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to know that, I did say spoiler alert before that. We're deep into the episode. We're obviously going to talk about the Batman.
I mean,
spoilers
how do you
are coming.
Know that by now?
Yeah, I know. Spoilers are coming. It's all off now.
They're here. They're everywhere. You thought we were going to give you a warning. We gave you a little bit. Did you think we were going to be like, no, we're going to dance around. No, we get right into it and we pop it when you least expect it.
Yeah, exactly. From here on, all bets are off. So Stop listening if you don't want any more spoilers.
Yes. So let's get into our thoughts on the movie.
All right.
I guess I can go first. All right. Now, I'm not going to bury the lead. I did not like this movie. But I'll say this. As a Batman adaptation of the movies of the 21st century, it is easily the most faithful adaptation we've ever had in the 21st century. It's more faithful, I think, to the Nolan movies. It's more faithful than what Zack Snyder did. As a Batman adaptation, there's obviously a few issues, but it checks off so much.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, it's just not a very good movie, in my opinion. It's overstuffed. It has competing main storylines that are not very interesting or well told, and has horrible pacing issues. And this is the thing, like, the most frustrating thing is, like, I can see what Matt Reeves was going for. Like, and what he's going for is awesome. And I get what his intention is, but I just don't think the execution is done very well. And I'm just like, oh, I see what you're going for, but it's like, oh, it's just not working. And now some people might be asking, oh, is this another Dark Knight Rises? No. No. Let's clear that out of the way.
Yeah.
Dark Knight Rises is a once in a lifetime. Like, what was that piece of garbage? Like, when, like, with the Batman, like, I can't get mad because Matt understood Batman, which, you know, we're all a little sensitive because, you know, as Batman fans, we had the last two directors didn't really understand him that well. So, but, you know, it's fine when they don't have total control. But, you know, I do think understanding the character is kind of that's like the least you could at least do. But like Dark Knight Rises was Christopher Nolan never understood the character. He made it so that no one could continue it. And he clearly, I mean, you watch the movie, he clearly didn't care anymore. It was just thrown together. Unlike the Batman, this is not an exaggeration. The Batman did not make me stop being a Batman fan for a day. Where after the Dark Knight Rises, I was like, I don't even know if I like this character anymore. It's so bad. And it killed my interest in live action superhero movies until Arrow kind of brought it back. So no, it is not the Batman. The Batman is not on the level of Dark Knight Rises. Let's just put that out. It is not. It is like, I can't get mad over the Batman. Like, I get what you're going for, but it's just not working for me. So that's my thoughts. All right. My initial thoughts. So, we'll get into more of it too. So what we haven't talked about. So what are your thoughts on the Batman?
Well, actually, you know, hold on, because I gotta go grab my notes. And this would have been much funnier if my Robert Pattinson Batman face was my icon right now.
Oh, yes.
So keep that in mind.
All right, I'm picturing it.
All right, I think I found my notes.
Okay. We don't get a copyright strike.
That's why I played it instead of just like playing the song. I think we're good.
Yes. Did you already know that, or did you have to look?
I had to learn it. It was really easy though.
Oh, I'm a bit impressed. Like, wow, you went all out for this episode.
I was happy to see that it was really, really easy to play.
Yes.
This movie sent me into my emo arc, and it was pretty nice. But let's get into my notes. I think that the Batman is a spellbinding example of excellent world building and the use of film as a visual art. The characters are understated and more down to earth than the average superhero film, but this leaves room for more mystery and atmosphere to take over. So I really like the movie. I think its 3-hour runtime could ward off some, but in my opinion, it was necessary to let scenes breathe and give the audience time to think. And the movie is ultimately about solving a puzzle. And despite the amount of action, I would not put it under the action movie genre like every other superhero film has been, with it being more of a mystery, crime, thriller, twinge of horror, having much more in common with movies in that realm than any other superhero film. The film happens very slowly, and the snail's pace reveal of information could be irritating to some, but to me, that's the very thing that makes the movie compelling. I do find that there are undeniable imperfections with minor plot points. Some reveals came across to me as anticlimactic, and the acting only simply does the job and nothing more. However, none of this struck my mind upon the first watch enough to detriment my enjoyment of the film. So overall, I thought the Batman was great. I don't think it's for everyone, but it scratched that itch I was looking for a Batman film based on solving a mystery and good old intrigue.
Oh, yes. So at least one of us is a fan of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like it. I think I haven't had a movie in a long time like transport me into a mood, a feeling so wholly. Like I was just kind of transported to this. I think I am. It transported me to this red tinted rainy. It just rains 100% of the time there.
Oh yes.
It never doesn't rain in this Gotham. I was just like transported to this rainy Gotham where Nirvana played and this Kurt Cobain-esque brooding Batman just kind of was my scenery for 3 hours.
Oh yes. So, shall we get into now for those of you who've never done or listened to one of these specials before, normally we break into what worked and what didn't work. So I guess now we'll start with the characters first. That's normally what we do. So let's first talk about Batman in this movie. So for the most part, Batman is a very classic version of the character, and I was really happy about that. I really liked the year 2 time era they chose because it was Batman was still new, but knew more of what he was doing compared to Christopher Nolan's Batman, where, like in Dark Knight, Joker says Batman wasn't around a year ago, so he's still in that year 1 phase in Dark Knight.
Yeah.
So it felt more like the version from the Burton films, animated series, and Arkham games. So I don't know if we wanted to talk about the character first before we talk about Robert Pattinson's performance.
I think I have more to say about the character anyway, so we can talk about Batman as a character in this movie.
Okay, so that's pretty much what I had to say. I thought overall they did a great job of adapting the Batman character. We'll wait a little bit to talk about Bruce Wayne, which they didn't do as great a job on, but we'll focus on Batman right now.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's tough for me to say, like, kind of dig into my thoughts about that without touching on the Bruce Wayne element, because I think my feeling...
Well, you know what? Maybe I will talk about Bruce Wayne real quick then.
Yeah,
just to make it easier.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess basically my thought was that I would say there's barely even a Bruce Wayne in this movie. Like, which I can see, like, I've seen this as a criticism that they just don't think he was a good Bruce Wayne, but he was a good Batman. But I don't even know if he's not a good Bruce Wayne because there's barely a Bruce Wayne in this movie. However, I do think that to call this like a bad part of the movie, I think would be somewhat missing the point, because I think it was an interesting take to me to have this person, barely Bruce Wayne, this person who's so consumed by this mechanism of dealing with his trauma, and like that he really doesn't, at least at this point, 2 years into it, before we see what happens next, like we're seeing a glimpse of Batman's life where there just isn't Bruce Wayne there. He's kind of just transformed. He's just into this case. Like, he becomes a mechanism for solving this case, but I think that's also potentially an interesting thing about the character. And we see glimpses of Bruce Wayne come through and caring about Alfred and stuff, but it's tough, because I do think that, like, there was nothing special about his performance as Bruce Wayne or anything, but I also don't know if that's really, I think, like, the way I draw from it is that that's kind of the point.
Yeah, I think like, I don't think they did as good a job with Bruce Wayne. But I kind of get where it's like, okay, he is still just starting out as Batman. He hasn't really created the Bruce Wayne persona. But it's not year one Batman. He's been Batman for a little bit. And you know what? I'm sorry. But like in the funeral scene, the scene where they go to the funeral, where the cop says, "Hey, look, Mr. Wayne," and he waves.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Bruce Wayne's either Batman or the Riddler with the way he acts at that funeral. He's either Batman or the Riddler. Like everyone, there's no denying that. Like I think obviously, number one, it was nice to see that Matt Reeves understood that Batman is the real person and Bruce Wayne is the disguise, which I see some people on Twitter say like, well, no, Batman's just a symbol that Bruce Wayne created. I'm like, okay, you little Nolan fan, don't get out of here with that crap. It's been a decade and we're still seeing the negative effects of Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
But, I like how we saw that, but at the same time, it's like, this isn't year one Batman. This is year two. He should be developing a little. And I just think that if he's guarded about his identity, there should be a little bit more of a performance. And there, I don't know if it's more of, if we get in the sequel and it's like, it was because he's still figuring out how to be Batman and Bruce Wayne, I can understand that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if you're in Gotham, he's either Batman or the Riddler. Like, he is. Like, especially when police interact with him and he just stares like, oh, yeah, it's a funeral. You know what? There was a moment, because Bruce is so depressed in this movie, I thought he was going to go up to the kid and be like, hey, my parents died too. Does it get better? No. If anything, it gets worse.
That would be awesome.
You should consider yourself lucky. Why is that, Mr. Wayne? Well, you got to see your dad yesterday. I haven't seen my dad in 20 years. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wayne. Thank you. It's been tough. I just feel like this Bruce Wayne, every minute, every time he interacts with someone, he's going to be like, oh, Mr. Wayne, are you going to contribute to this mayoral fund? I would, but my parents, they died 20 years ago and it still hurts.
Yeah. I will admit, like, there are times in this movie where I really kind of laughed out loud because it's just like, I feel like it so knows what it is and it's like doing it at the cost of making sense sometimes. And in some ways I respect it for that, which is kind of where I'm coming from, I guess.
Yeah. So let's talk about Robert Pattinson's performance as Batman. So I overall thought he was good. Now, I'm not going to lie. I didn't like his performance as much as I thought I was going to. Like, I thought he was going to be like top. And overall I thought he was good. Like, he did not break into that category where I put Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, Ben Affleck. I would say he's kind of a middle Batman, where he's around where you'd put like Adam West or Ian Glenn from Titans. Like, overall, good. I do think there's room for improvement, though, because sometimes when he was in the bat suit, it did get a little hard to understand what he was saying. Especially, there was that one scene in the trailer where he pounds on the glass when he's speaking to Riddler, and no one could understand what he was saying. And there were some moments his voice did get a little Christian Bale-like. I'm like, no, we don't want that. We want to avoid anything like Christian Bale. Sorry, Nolan fans. I admit this movie. I don't want to just keep bashing Nolan. You know, I love Batman Begins, love Dark Knight, better than this movie in my opinion. But yeah, let's not get into the voice. But overall, I thought he was good. Clear of actors, like some are better at Bruce Wayne, some are better as Batman. Keaton, better as Batman. Christian Bale, even though I'm not a fan of his performance, was a better Bruce Wayne than he was as Batman. I'd say Ben is a better Batman than he was Bruce Wayne. Robert Pattinson clearly was a better Batman than Bruce Wayne, but I don't think the Bruce in here was really his choice. I think it was more direction by Matt Reeves of like, he's still figuring out how to be the persona of Bruce Wayne. So, overall, I liked him. I'm okay with him being Batman. I didn't love his performance like I thought I was going to. Like, I think, like, when we saw him, like, fight the dude and say, "I'm vengeance," I was just like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. And it didn't, to me, Pattinson didn't live up to the hype, but I thought overall he was good. And I look forward to seeing more of him as Batman. So, even though there's room for improvement. So, what'd you think of Robert Pattinson as Batman?
Yeah, I would say overall, I'll say after, I'm still thinking about it because after first watch, I would say I thought he was really good, and it met expectations, I guess I would say, but I maybe left thinking about now how good was it? Like, I don't like the pervasive thing coming out of that movie, like, it wasn't necessarily something about his performance as Batman that stood out. It was just like the movie as a whole, and the overall feeling and directional choices of it. And I was just like, was Batman just kind of there, like, good enough? Like, that's what I was trying to grapple with. And then I watched it for a second time.
You watched it twice.
Yes. And I was like, this is much better than I gave it credit for, I think. So I think I would place it as really good. I don't know where I would place it overall. I don't know if it's absolutely blows my mind, but I think it's really good.
So I guess we'll narrow it down between our recent three of Bale, Affleck, and Pattinson. How would you, I guess, rank those three if you can? Or is that something you haven't really thought about?
I'll say I would put Pattinson up top. If we're talking those three, I can say pretty definitively I would put Pattinson up top.
All right. Yeah, of those three, for me, I would say Affleck, Pattinson, Bale.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, overall, yeah, that was Batman. All right.
The Batman.
Let's talk about Catwoman in the movie. So,
yeah,
I really liked this version of Catwoman. I thought it did a great job of showing that, Batman has a very black and white view, crime is bad, justice is good.
Yeah.
Vengeance, hell yeah. But in Batman's world, what makes Catwoman so interesting is that she's the gray in his world. Like, she is like kind of like in Batman Returns, right? He's like, don't you see, Selina? We're the same, split right down the center. But she's also a criminal, and Batman knows that even like Catwoman is in a position in her life, like Batman could be with her because she could join him on his mission of fighting crime in Gotham. But the problem is she's also a criminal. And, I don't want to. Oh, I'll mention it. Okay. I thought they did a much better job showing that Catwoman was the gray compared to the previous movie version of Catwoman.
Mm-hmm.
That was done in The Dark Knight Rises. Again, I'm going to try to stop bringing up The Dark Knight Rises. That's not what we're talking about. And I would say Zoë Kravitz as Catwoman might be my favorite casting in the movie. There's one other person who might be, but I thought Zoë Kravitz did such a great job playing the role. She actually was Catwoman in the Lego Batman movie, which overall I don't think is very good, but she is Catwoman in there. And also she's in two Marvel movies. Do you know what they are? Well, not MCU, just Marvel in general.
Should I know? I don't.
All right.
I don't think.
I don't remember what the character's name is, but she is in X-Men First Class.
Oh, okay.
And she's Mary Jane in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh.
Yes. She's done pretty good for being Aquaman's stepdaughter.
Yeah.
So, I think like a big thing, kind of like Batman, I think a big part of like playing Catwoman is kind of how does her voice sound? And I thought, because I think the way you perform, like you kind of have to have like a special voice for it. And I think Zoe Kravitz, similar to Michelle Pfeiffer and Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt, and the one from the Adam West movie whose name I'm drawing a blank on, I'm sorry. But overall, they had a very distinctive voice when they played Catwoman. I thought Zoe did a great job, because there is like something in the Catwoman voice that's like, yeah, that sounds like Catwoman, kind of like how Batman sounds like Batman. So overall, great version of Catwoman. I might be my favorite. I would say right now, I think she was my favorite casting in the movie. I just thought she did such a great job as Catwoman. And the one thing I would change is I didn't like the mask that she had. I wish it would have been a little cooler looking, but you know, if we get her again, maybe they'll do it. But Zoe Kravitz, great Catwoman. So
yeah,
what do you think about Catwoman in the movie?
Yeah. Also, I also agree. Really great Catwoman, one of the standout characters of the movie to me. It made so much of the movie so great to me as like the secondary main character almost. I personally hope they're going to continue with the trilogy, and I hope they don't drop the ball with like, I think that this is such a standout character that it would be a disservice to not make this like the iconic Catwoman and give her due in the next like 2 movies as well. Because
you think she'll be in the next movie?
I don't have a prediction. I just think that she should absolutely. It's hard to imagine like moving on with this version without Catwoman to me now.
I kind of think she might not be in the second one and she'd return for the third one.
I could see that, and that wouldn't upset me too much, but I want her to return for sure, because it wouldn't be the same completely without her. So yeah, one of the standout performances, and it does feel to me immediately iconic in a way that I was just like, that's Catwoman. And, you know, I basically forgot until this podcast recording that there was a Catwoman in live action previous in the Nolan movies.
Yes.
Like, that's how forgettable that was in comparison.
Honestly, whenever someone brings up Anne Hathaway, I never remember that she's Catwoman.
Yeah. Like I remember Anne Hathaway for things, and she's famous, but Catwoman, it slips my mind.
Yes. All right, so let's move on to Jim Gordon.
All right.
Timothy himself, if we want to quote The Office.
Yeah, Jimothy.
Wouldn't that have been? I would love that if, like, maybe Batman would have been like, "Do you prefer Jimothy?"
Jim.
Oh, yes.
Can I, Jimothy? Can I call you Jimothy?
That sounds a little weird. Do you prefer Jim?
James.
Yeah, one of the best film versions of Jim Gordon we've ever had on film. It felt like a combination of Gary Oldman, who is my favorite Commissioner Gordon, although he's not commissioner in this movie, and Pat Hingle from the Burton Schumacher movies. And I liked how in this movie, because one of my things about some of the other Batman movies is it didn't really feel like Gotham needed a Batman. Like, it was like, well, maybe Gotham police is like, they're a little corrupt, but I liked how in this movie it felt like Gordon was in a position where Batman was the only one he could trust. And Jeffrey Wright was, I thought, great in the role. I am excited to see him as Commissioner Gordon. I mean, James Gordon. I think he's lieutenant in the movie, but He's not commissioner yet. But overall, I thought he was great in the movie. So what'd you think about this film's version of James Gordon himself?
Yeah. I love Jim Gordon. Great chemistry with Batman in this. Of course, Gary Oldman, as many was an insanely good Jim Gordon. It's so hard to compare. That's one thing the Nolan movies has for sure, is a great Jim Gordon.
Oh yeah.
So it's hard to compare, but I like that it is different. I like the that he doesn't have that much. He's not a commissioner yet, obviously. And he doesn't have that much power, and he's kind of struggling against that. But he's the one who believes in Batman. And
I'm gonna look up, what was he in the film? I think he's a lieutenant.
I think I read somewhere he was a lieutenant. But yeah, Lieutenant Gordon. I assume.
Yeah, he's a lieutenant.
I mean, I think he's, like I said, I think he's great, and I mean, it also, part of the greatness to me has to do with the fact that this movie is probably my favorite depiction of the relationship between Batman and the Gotham police, because just the extent of the corruption and not shying away from the ugliness and having a really hateful back and forth between the police and Batman. It felt like it read the room a little bit better for the times as well, acknowledging police corruption and stuff. And it made for a more enticing, this is why it's made one of the only times I've really believed that they need a vigilante hero, which has sometimes been my problem in superhero movies, where it's in the past I might have thought of it as a little bit of a dangerous concept to just have a vigilante going and fighting justice. But when the police are absolutely corrupt to their core and doing the crimes, there's a lesson there, and I like that Batman is trying to do good in the face of all of this, and the dynamic of Jim Gordon truly being the absolute only sliver of an in that he has into the inner workings of Gotham, and even then he's not welcome there. It's a great dynamic.
Yeah, I think that the only adaptions that really went into how corrupt the Gotham Police Department is the Batman and the Gotham TV show. Which, by the way, did you ever read Batman Year One?
It's still sitting there.
Okay, because there's a lot from that they pulled from that. Also, here's a little fun fact, because I didn't know if I need to say it now so I don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
The movie's clearly inspired by Batman: The Long Halloween.
Yeah.
One of Matt Reeves' screenwriting, I think he was a screenwriting teacher, was Jeff Loeb, who wrote The Long Halloween. So there's a little connection there.
Interesting.
Yes. Kind of like how Star Wars, everyone's connected.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about our favorite butler, Alfred Pennyworth himself.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So I thought Andy Serkis was was great in the role. I don't know if there has been a better cast character in superhero history than Alfred Pennyworth, because every single one, starting with William Austin in 1943, through Michael Goff, through Michael Caine, through Jeremy Irons, through Sean Pertwee in Gotham, and now Andy Serkis, everyone has been perfect casting. And I don't want to jinx, but I don't know if we've ever had a comic book character that has been perfectly cast so many times. Every single time you're yes,
yeah, you're
a
right,
definitive
actually.
Alfred.
I've never disliked an Alfred.
Yes. So Andy Serkis was great in the role. He reminded me a lot of Sean Pertwee's version from the Gotham TV show, who's my favorite version of Alfred. Yes, Andy Serkis is very good in the role. not a lot to say about Alfred because he's very underused in the film, which isn't a problem until something that happens later in the film where you're like, well, this has no emotional context because of he was underused earlier. But overall, great performance. Hopefully they use him better in another movie. So what do you think about Andy Serkis as Alfred in the movie?
It's fun. Andy Serkis as Alfred was one of the castings that I did not know until I was watching it. And when he walked in, I was like, precious. But yeah. And I think it's funny that he says that he was like remembering his days in the circus. That's his name. Anyway.
Oh, it's fun.
I think he was very good. I'm now like you mentioning that how solid every single casting of Alfred has been makes me feel a little bit better about the fact that like I was just like I do think it was a really great casting as Alfred and great performance. I don't know, like in comparison to anything, like it just felt like there's Alfred. It was perfectly solid. And I can see what you're saying about maybe some of the underutilized. Like I would have I do think that later, despite very little relative screen time, that when it was important for you to care about him and the relationship with Batman, there maybe could have been a little bit more build up to that to make you really care about Alfred. It would have been to the movie's benefit. But I do think they did a good job at sort of retroactively showing just how much Alfred cares and the close connection they have. And I think the other thing I really liked actually is, he showed himself to be very helpful and resourceful, and actually, helped with some of the mystery solving. I very much appreciate it. Like in general, this movie just had, Batman was not like a Sherlock type genius who walked in and immediately knew everything. He got help from all of his friends, and I always loved that kind of stuff. And Alfred was a smart help, and I thought that was a good utilization of the character, at least for that, to the small extent that happened. Yes. So yes, another solid character.
Oh yes. So I'll bring up one other character in positives. I don't know, maybe if we're talking positives right now, there might be a character you want to bring up after this. But I'll bring up the last character I have positive, and that is Oswald Cobblepot himself, the Penguin.
Yeah.
Yes. So I loved this version of Penguin. I felt like it was the perfect combination of Danny DeVito's like Penguin, where he's like a little more comedic and he's still trying to like fit in, but yet also like the version that I think his name is Robin Lord Taylor played in the Gotham TV show of he's trying to rise up in the Gotham underworld. And Matt Reeves said that this version of Penguin was inspired by Fredo from The Godfather, which I can now see.
Really? I thought he was inspired by Babyface Antonio.
Oh man, I wish. Like, what were those fake candy cigarettes?
Yeah.
Yes. And I really liked how they had him run the Iceberg Lounge like we had in Batman the Animated Series and the Arkham games. And one of the things is if he at some points felt like a throwback to like old classic 40s and 50s villains. Like one of my favorite moments is where Batman's fighting the villain and he goes, "Hey, take it easy, sweetheart."
Yeah.
That felt
awesome.
like something that we've been missing, like a little bit of fun. And I mentioned earlier that Zoë Kravitz is I think my favorite casting in the movie, but my other one is probably Colin Farrell as Penguin. I thought he did such a great job. So to me, those two, in terms of casting, were the standouts. And yeah, I thought I love this version of Penguin. I thought he was great.
Yeah. So when you said this is your last positive to bring up, unless I can bring up more positive, I was like, I hope it's the Penguin, because then I'm gonna have to awkwardly, with my tail between my legs, say the Penguin is one of the coolest characters in this movie to me.
Yes.
Every scene he's in just makes me smile. He's such a standout. He has a delightful and engaging chemistry with everyone. I like that he's like a somewhat lower level mob boss, and he's not like just this like pure evil villain. And I mean, not saying he's good. I'm saying he's just
in crime a little bit. He's not full Falcone yet.
Yeah, he's sort of neutral, just doing what he wants, and most of what he wants is pretty bad. But the old mobster style thing. It was so fitting for the tone of the movie too, that it just felt right in place. Yeah, great. Not enough positives about the Penguin in this.
Yes. So let's move on to, well, I guess you could kind of consider this a character. We'll talk about Gotham City.
I was going to say that as like a eye-rolling joke, that my favorite character in the movie was Gotham City.
Oh, yes. So I think this and the Joker movie are the best versions of Gotham City we've ever seen in a live-action movie. And this was a scary place that felt like it needed a Batman. And yeah. I don't know how to describe this, but it felt like it was trying to be grounded and realistic, but didn't sacrifice kind of like, this is a superhero movie. Like, it felt like I love The Dark Knight, but I don't think it's the best looking Batman movie. I think some of it is like, in terms of like the costumes and sets and all that, I'm just like, but I liked how like it was trying to be grounded and realistic, but yet it still looked cool. Like, I think the best way to describe it is this, and I don't know if this makes sense, but it feels like Tim Burton inspired Batman in a post Christopher Nolan world, if you know what I mean. Like, it just like it looks comic booky, but still we have a little bit of dabble in the real world. And I think part of it is like the movie has kind of a timeless feel. Like, it could take place in 2022.
Yes.
Or it could take place in the 70s for all we know. So yeah, so I thought they did a great job with Gotham in the movie. So what'd you think about Gotham City?
Okay, so because I loved this movie and I have a lot of hyperbolous things to say, I will say that if you take one hyperbolous thing that I say away from this, I can absolutely say that this is my favorite Gotham that has ever been portrayed, and that it is probably the best thing that this movie gave to me. I really love this Gotham, and immediately after watching it, I turned to my friend and said, I just want like the next Arkham game to be set here. Like, I just like, this is such a cool setting. Also, I must say, like, my favorite kind of setting is exactly what you mentioned, which is this sort of timelessness where it's not like commenting too much on like, this is set in right now, so it's relatable to you, the audience, right now, because we have smartphones and social media. I mean, to be fair, a smartphone and a live stream was a major part of this movie. But then Batman also had like what looked like a 80s laptop or something. Like it felt like a series of unfortunate events does that, where it's something like one will have a computer and then they'll be using like a telegram, and it just
or an old rotary phone.
And also, that series never mentions a real world city at all. It just kind of takes place. There's like, it doesn't need to explain that to you. And I liked that this Gotham, a lot of times, like, sometimes it can feel like it's Gotham, but I mean, it's New York City, like something like that,
or Chicago,
where it feels like a real world city, and you can kind of make those connections. This felt so like, I almost want to say fantasy like, because it felt like its complete own universe with its own rules, but it was also completely down to earth in the fact that there was no real like fantasy to it, or it wasn't overly comic booky like you said, but it had a little of that. It managed to be extremely down to earth while also feeling like it was completely its own world with its own rules, and I thought it played into those rules very well. Like, I mean, this part was kind of, I don't know, this is a little hard to explain, but like the part where, and this has a little to do with the choices of how to portray Batman, but like for some reason, like when Batman was running away and he got to the top of the like, police tower and had to jump off in this like weird contraption where he floated down, and it was very ungraceful, and he just slammed into the ground. And like it's all rainy and wet, and he slams into the wet ground. That's kind of an example of how I feel like this Gotham just has like its own rules, and they're kind of grounded in reality. But when things don't quite make sense, like I don't know, he also like he's right up in the face of a bomb and it explodes and he seems basically fine. It like all of that kind of makes sense within the logic of this Gotham in a way that's kind of hard to explain, but it's because I feel like it did a really good job of world building.
Oh yes. So let's talk about this part might be a little hard for you to talk about. Let's talk about the influence that Jeff Loeb's The Long Halloween had on this movie.
Yeah, let's.
Yes. So, Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale is one of my favorite Batman comics. They actually did like a little sequel book that came out last year. It's like a $10 little longer issue. It was awesome. It was great. So, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. The newest kind of like 14th issue of The Long Halloween for its 25th anniversary. It was great. So I thought, now, here's the thing. We already have a movie based on The Long Halloween called The Dark Knight. But The Long Halloween's this big 13-issue series. I thought Matt Reeves did a great job of taking what Nolan hadn't taken from for The Dark Knight and crafting its own separate movie. And thought what he took from the ideas he took from The Long Halloween, he was able to create a movie that is very different from The Dark Knight. But if you watch them back to back, then you do have The Long Halloween story. You just have to edit them in a little bit. But yeah, you watch those two back to back, you have the story of The Long Halloween. So I'm assuming you've not read The Long Halloween.
No.
So the point, it's a bit useless to talk about your thoughts on it. So
yeah, but I mean, there it is.
Yes. So I guess let's jump into so now I only have a few other positive things to bring up. So I guess we'll jump back and forth for positive stuff to bring up.
I mean, I almost feel like I would feel better relaying my positives in response to your negatives when we get into it.
Oh, okay.
To relieve us a little bit.
Okay.
Because I don't have any necessarily specific positive notes, but there are a couple other things that come to mind that I did like, that because you have left them off, I assume you didn't like.
Oh, okay. Yes. Although, there's a chance, because this is a 3-hour movie and it's been a while, so I had to read the summary off Wikipedia. Yeah. I wanted to read ahead of time, but I wasn't able to before we recorded this. It was, they put out a prequel novel that takes place before the movie.
Oh, I heard of this. Yeah.
Yes, I got it. Luckily, I got it for my birthday because I think it's sold out right now. Like,
Oh.
yes, I mean you can get a digital version off Apple
Mhm.
Books or whatever, but I've been meaning to get to it, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting.
yes, so let's talk about you know what it is? It's one of those. Do you remember when we were younger when they would have the junior novels that would have like the pictures from the movie in the middle?
Yeah. Oh,
They got
yeah.
that in there.
Yeah, awesome.
I love that.
That's what we need right now.
Yes. All right. We'll talk about the Batmobile chase. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
So, one of the coolest Batmobile scenes we've ever seen. And I love the Batmobile design in this movie. It is,
Yeah, it's awesome.
I think, the best. Look, I like the Tumbler, especially as someone who loves Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. That's where clearly Tumbler had its influence from. I really liked Ben Affleck's Batmobile. But I would say I think this is the best looking Batmobile we've had since George Clooney's in Batman and Robin. Like, it just looks so classic and sleek and just chef's kiss I would get.
Yeah.
It looks awesome. So
it's really awesome. I also love it. And another example of something that like when you see it for the first time in this movie, it just makes sense because it fits into the logic of this world completely.
I would also like to bring up something real quick. You know, some people freak out whenever they see set photos or whatever. We have, if you go back, we talk about how horrible the suit in this movie looks from those set photos. But in context of the movie, it looked great. The suit did. I
did not have... I thought it looked cool the whole time. I completely forgot. In context, there's no complaints in context.
Yes. I mean, I would have liked for like maybe the size of the chin to be covered a little more. But
I think I think this is probably common, but the little teeny ears are like...
Yeah, I would say a little
questionable.
More thicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Batmobile chase was great. I love what Penguin's like, I got you.
Yeah.
But he didn't get him. And obviously we're throwing a lot of tributes to Neil Adams. Batmobile looked very Neil Adams-like, as did the suit. So what'd you think of the Batmobile chase? That was awesome.
Yeah, it was really awesome. Like I mentioned in my first comments that like I really love that this... It's like the superhero genre is like synonymous with the action genre. And like in my first comment, I like that this kind of challenges that a bit, where like this is a superhero movie, but the genre is not an action movie. This scene challenges that somewhat, but I also think it is, you know, the exception to the rest of the movie. But it is so well placed in the movie, and like, I mean, there's a lot of buildup. It's really cathartic for there to be that big scene at that part of the movie, and it is, man, it's just one of the coolest car chases. I mean, I usually think car chases are kind of annoying in movies.
Oh yes, I do too.
Like it's just like you don't know what's going on, and it's just loud. And I don't care about cars that much. But this had so many visuals and interesting things going on that, and like a lot of the Penguin, which, as we talked about, is one of the best characters in this movie.
Yes.
And I just love the Penguin being so sure that he got him, and then ultimately a massive crash in which Batman just totally has him, and he's that slow walk up and just of. What were you saying?
Oh,
that is a standout scene for sure.
All right, let's talk about. Okay, we'll bring this up. I didn't want to talk about. I don't want to keep talking. This is about the Batman. This isn't about the Dark Knight Rises. But I do have something that I need to bring up. It's towards the end, so we're getting close to the end of my positives. I really enjoyed how this at the end called out that stupid ending from The Dark Knight Rises and said, that's wrong. this is how it's supposed to be. I don't know if you know what it is. There's a scene where towards the end, after I think Riddler's been defeated, Catwoman talks about how she's leaving Gotham and asks Batman to come with her.
Yeah.
But Batman looks up and he sees the bat signal and he's like, no, I can't do it. And it was just like, yes.
Yeah.
That is the way it's supposed to be, you know? It's supposed to be where Batman's duty to Gotham comes above everything else. And it also showed he can't be with Catwoman because she is also a criminal. And once again, showed that, like, I mean, look, we're all, again, I said it earlier, we're all a little sensitive as Batman fans because the last solo Batman director did not understand the character. So it was nice to see Matt Reeves did understand the Batman character. Like, no, can't go with her. His duty is to save Gotham. So I don't know if you have as much of a reaction to that, where it was like, yeah, call out the crap Night Rises. Do it,
I totally noted that. Like, it came to mind where, like, it's like, if he leaves right now, that's completely contrary to the rest of this movie. And, of course, I didn't expect him to, and he did stay. But I did note that is distinctly different from The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, yes. So I guess I'll bring up my last positive thing. Again, it's been almost 3 months since I've seen the movie. And, yeah. All right. I liked how at the end, Batman realized he can be more than just a vengeful vigilante, and he can inspire hope. And it felt like it was him becoming even more like that classic version of Batman. Like, he's not going to be Superman where he gives speeches or Captain America, but it's more than just like, I'm going to find, whoever killed my parents. It's like,
yeah,
I'm going to make sure that what happened to me happens to no one else. And it's a lot kind of like in Batman Forever, where he's just like, see, I'm both Bruce Wayne and Batman, not because I have to be, but because I choose to be. So I thought it's a little bit unearned, but I liked the resolution of, like, yes, I'm more than just a vengeful vigilante who beats up muggers. So, by the way, that opening scene was pretty good too, where he fights the gang who looks like they're imitating the Joker.
Yeah,
and he beats up someone who played Tim Drake, the third Robin in Titans. So that was interesting to see. So little multiverse connection for you. Was that Tim Drake meeting younger Batman? Who knows? So yeah, what'd you think about that kind of resolution at the end?
What was this point?
It was like like realizing he can be like more of a symbol for hope instead of just the vengeful vigilante.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I ultimately think that the motivations in this movie were solid, and Batman's probably the most so. I was definitely compelled by that. Definitely believable. I think all of the motivations in this movie were pretty solid. At the very least, we can agree that this one was.
Yes. All right, now positives are out of the way. Let's get into what didn't work. Now, to be fair, I have...
It's not the end of positive. I'll chime in some positives.
Like, to be fair, I have like 10 positives, 13 negatives. So it is a little even.
It's not that bad. I have 2 negatives. I think that's it.
Okay. So we talked about almost every character in the movie, except for one. There's one we didn't mention in the positives.
Yeah, I know.
And that is, it's coming.
I know it's coming, and I like this character, and I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
I'm glad you liked this version. All right, let's talk about the Riddler. So, the Riddler to me in this movie, first of all, okay, he never felt like he was a real threat or had much of a presence in the movie. He would just pop up at random times. Oh, I'm here. Oh, I'm here. He never felt like Heath Ledger's the Joker or Jack's the Joker. He just felt like he would randomly pop up. And honestly, when I think of the movie, I never think of the Riddler. Like, he is to me the most forgettable character in the movie. And at times, especially with when we saw the whole live stream thing, that felt really corny. And overall, especially knowing this came from the Long Halloween, I get it. At some time, you don't want him to feel like a Joker clone because he could be.
Yeah.
But this felt like more of a crazy version of the villain Holiday from Jeff Loeb's and Tim Sale's The Long Halloween. But I'll just say it. In terms of every Batman movie we've ever had, this is the most forgettable villain. Like, Tom Hardy's Bane, I think, is the worst Batman movie villain. But he's still memorable. Like, you remember him for how awful he is. Like, when I think of the Batman, I honestly forget he was in the movie. Because he had no presence. He didn't feel like he was really much of a threat. And he was just kind of there in the background. So, yeah, to me, the most forgettable character in the movie. Honestly, I could care less if we ever see him again. Because I did like how they didn't kill him off. Like, he's still around where he could pop up. But compared to Catwoman or Penguin, I could care less if we ever see this version. Whatever. So what do you think about? You like this version of the Riddler, though.
I do. When you say, honestly, when I think of the Batman, I have to say I think that the Riddler is one of the things about it that does stand out to me. And I'll explain the reason for that. Because, again, like I mentioned a lot, like how I feel this like constitutes a different genre of film and it has more in common with like other films. And so, like, to me, this type of villain is what the movie needed to be the mystery that it was. And like, he's not that present, but it does kind of give this sense of like he could strike at any time and you don't even really know who it is. And let me get more into this is what I wrote. So I think I get some of what you're saying, but to me, the strongest thing about him as the Riddler, and this might not make sense at first, is how unbelievably lame he is. Just this little Dorcas.
Also, he comes off pretty corny, especially with how muffled his voice was.
Yeah. This guy's pathetic. And to me, that makes it special to me. Because I think a lot of times movies depict like serial killers and villains as these like dastardly smart, like kind of battle of the wits with the main character that like sometimes get these cult followings for being like so badass. And that was an interesting change of pace to me, is that this villain is completely not badass. In fact, I think it reflects like a lot of like as someone obsessed with true crime, and it will just like watch like police interrogation videos in full and stuff, and just like sees how like just whiny and small and like not smart or cool in any way a lot of like murderers are. Like it really stuck with me the first time, and I'll say after first seeing the movie, it took me a little while to think about it more and justify it as one of the good parts of the movie, because I wasn't sure, like the reactions to a lot of the stuff that he did and like the way he talked and the way he interacted with Batman in the one scene, like they didn't strike me the way I would normally expect a villain interaction to strike me. But like it really did stick with me the first time we see him without his mask. And to me, he just looks so like pasty and pathetic just sitting there, that he's just some dumb kid who like it's interesting to me. And then in the interaction with he turns himself in as an excuse to meet Batman, who he's kind of obsessed with. And the fact that he did all of this evil, reading the whole thing totally wrong. Like, he has this unrequited fan love for Batman, and everything he did was for nothing. And I thought his reaction to that was really amazing, because it seemed so pathetic. And you're just left thinking, like, all of this, like, murder and mayhem and riddles and all of this, like, basically Batman failed, the Riddler failed, we're all bummed out. But it's just, like, so bleak how this guy got so obsessed and murdered people, and it just seemed kind of reflective of the completely, like, the pointlessness of a lot of how murder actually is. And also, I have to say, like, I mean, this Riddler, people compare it to, like, Unabomber, or, like, it was directly inspired by the Zodiac Killer. And, I mean, I think there's a lot to that, because, I mean, I totally see it.
Well, Matt Reeves did confirm he was inspired by the Zodiac Killer.
I did see that. But I think it's also one of the characters that kind of ties this together in with. I've seen this comparison so much that it might be too much, but I also think that the comparisons are so similar that I almost can't go without mentioning the similarities to one of my favorite movies, which is Seven. And the, like, weird, like, off-screen relationship that the main characters have with trying to catch this killer. And the, like, little surprises that they leave throughout the way. So that the villain acts as an antagonist and a driver of the plot kind of off-screen. And, like, I could easily say that I think that Penguin is the more standout, stronger villain in this. Which I think is needed for how this Riddler is portrayed. But I do think he was a very good driver of the mystery and added to some of the bleakness and hopelessness. And I don't know, there's something like typical depictions of crazy like sort of fall flat to me lately, and something about the way he's, like, recording in this, like, empty room, like, just screaming at the camera, and he does not sound cool doing it. It struck something with me. Where it's like, I don't know if it's good, but it's I think it was very intentional, and that does stick out to me, that they set out to do something quite different with a villain, and I think they succeeded at it being quite different.
Yes, I can say everything you said sounds good. Yeah. Everything you said, like, he's just this normal, pathetic guy. But yet, I just felt he had almost no presence in the movie. It felt like because the movie was so overstuffed with so many different plots, it felt like, oh, we're going to focus on this. And, oh, yeah, Riddler killed another person. Oh, let's take a break from this and work on whatever this jerk just did. And I almost felt like besides the, like, big final thing, which he kind of sets off, like, he has almost no presence in the movie. Like, he could almost have been cut because he is so inconsequential except for the end in the movie.
I'm going to be honest, I don't think I even know what other plots you're even, like, to me it just seems like this movie is following the Riddler's next murder and then going to the Riddler's next murder and then going to the Riddler's next murder. Like, I don't really even know what the other plot lines are.
Well, I guess we'll get to it, but it's like there's a whole Catwoman thing where it's like finding about Falcone and her friend, and then it's we get another main plot line thrown in about Bruce and his parents. Which, did I tell you what I was afraid of? When I heard there was, like, a creative choice people didn't like, which I don't know what they're talking about, but
I have a feeling I'll say, could it be the corruption of his father? That Thomas Wayne was corrupt himself?
Maybe, but I don't think the movie said he was that corrupt. I mean, he was going to pay a journalist, and then Falcone was the one who killed. Like, Thomas Wayne didn't get the gun and say, "Come on, journalist."
Yeah.
Maybe that's
he's not perfect. I think other people might have read it as being like Thomas Wayne was not a complete idol in this. He was one of the corrupt like politicians.
Well, I took it as like he was doing a little bit of a great thing, but he trusted Falcone, and then Falcone kind of went against him, and he learned like, oh my God, I trusted the wrong person because
No, Falcone is definitely the bigger evil.
Yeah, is it?
Arguably the biggest evil in the movie. Like he kind of comes across as the top level evil. I think that's the point.
I think people who are, if there's anyone who's just like, this just showed Thomas Wayne is evil. So it's like, no, I think it showed he made a mistake and trusted the wrong people. Like, paying someone was bad, but like, I don't think it's Thomas Wayne in this version wasn't evil or whatever.
For sure, he definitely wasn't evil. I could see just people having a problem with the idea that he paid off a journalist or something. Like, that's it.
My fear, because a lot of people thought that we were going to find out Riddler and Bruce were somehow related or like brothers or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that probably came from the Court of Owls storyline where a villain tried to convince Bruce they were brothers or something. I thought, because I don't know why. Okay, this is just something that looks like, okay, it was a stupid scenario that was like a thing that could train wreck this movie before I went to go see it. I was just like, what if we find out that Riddler is actually Bruce Wayne, and that Bruce in the Batsuit finds out he is not related to the Waynes or something? Like they were somehow switched at birth. I would be like, screw this movie.
That would be, pretty bad.
That would be a creative choice that no one. You thought Martha was bad? Oh no, no.
Yeah, that would be a pointless creative choice that would a twist that would ruin everything.
Yes. All right, let's talk about another issue I have with the movie. It has horrible pacing issues. Just horrible pacing issues. It lingers way too long on all the scenes, and it kept losing me because so much unnecessary build-up time was spent to get to something interesting. And like, look, some movies like, we won't bring up Endgame because that's Marvel, like The Godfather, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the best movies ever made. Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. That's a 3-hour movie, but it doesn't waste its screen time. Like everything, like it moves the plot forward. Even like, even like the wedding scene at have you seen The Godfather?
No.
Well, you should, because I think you'd like it. You should sit down and watch The Godfather. Even though I like Part 2 better, but even like some people could say you could cut the wedding scene at the opening because the whole "you come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding" stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the wedding is used to kind of introduce our main characters. Like, okay, here is Vito Corleone. He is the crime boss. Here is Michael Corleone. He's a World War II soldier. He doesn't want to be part of the family business, and like even says to his girlfriend, he talks about how his father threatened to kill someone, and then she gives a surprised look, and he says, "That's not me, Kate. That's my family," or whatever. So it introduces everything, and we don't linger. Like this was like, oh my God, like deleted scene. Okay, did you ever see the deleted scene with the Joker?
No.
There's a deleted scene where Joker walks to the table. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Joker, how long does it take you to walk to a damn table? Like, come on. It cuts all these different camera angles of Joker walking. Batman staring at Joker walking. It's just like, guys, come on.
Yeah.
This isn't real. This is movie time. This isn't supposed to be real time.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no reason for this movie to be 3 hours long. It just, there were so many like there was so much unnecessary stuff that could have been cut.
Mhm.
So yeah, for me, the pacing in this movie was awful. It was
Yeah.
just, it's worse than like I would say it's even worse than Batman versus Superman's pacing. Like the pacing is awful in this movie. So what'd you think about that? That is
Yeah.
like one of the main things I hope Matt Reeves works on for the second movie,
Mhm.
which is work on your pacing. So
Yeah.
what'd you think?
Unfortunately, I think that this is, I can't defend any of that. I think that there's kind of a taste thing here because, I mean, at least for me, and I genuinely, I had a conversation about liking an aspect of this with a friend as well who also really liked this movie. And we were both kind of agreeing on this, but I'll speak for myself in that as my taste in movies is slightly changing and I want different things from cinema, one of the biggest things I'm realizing that I'm exhausted by is packing a movie with so much content, so much to give you, so much to tell you. And like moving through it too quickly. Like, just like, we need to tell this whole story and throw in all this dialogue, and every single time something is done being said or a scene is done like playing out, we're just on to the next thing. And it's that style of filmmaking, it loses something for me, where what I like in this movie, and when I think about a lot of the movies that I really like, I recently decided that my favorite movie of all time is the horror film Midsommar. That was a decision I made, and I started telling everyone after I got my director's cut Blu-ray edition of the movie. That movie, especially with the director's cut, is over 3 hours long, and it is a horror movie that just kind of slowly takes you through scene to scene of this, weird Swedish cult. And I mean, the reasons why that's so good in that movie to me are completely different, but it's just a reminder to me of, like, and this is the way the friend of mine said it, was literally, I think I like just boring, long slog, dry movies. Like, it's just like, I just want 3 hours where I'm just hit with a just slog of slow pacing and just vibes and feelings. And I kind of agree with that I feel like it's a taste thing, or just a different style of storytelling where like, you could cut stuff for sure, and the story would be told the same. But like, as I'm watching it, I just want more time to digest things, especially with how the setting is, which relies a lot on like sound and score, and like, like even just another extra second to hear the rain outside. Stuff like that is like really important to me in films. And I think like the plot, I like I said, I have two major issues which I can get into later. So it's not that the pacing is perfect or anything. But I don't fault it for that. Like, I like that there's 3 hours just laid out for you. It is what it is. I'm fine that it lingers on scenes. I'm fine. It's also like, it's kind of a Western style thing too. I've heard Breaking Bad is called a Western, like a modern Western. And one thing that Breaking Bad, the series, does is, I think one movie I've seen that is 3 hours is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That's a classic movie. I was surprised how much I liked that movie because I never thought I liked Westerns. But a thing I noticed about like the Western style of filmmaking and stuff, and Breaking Bad does this kind of thing, and it's set in the desert, is just like lingering. Like, imagine, even if you haven't seen any Westerns, imagine like the stereotype of just like seeing a cowboy just standing there, and it's silent, and it's just like you're waiting. And then, like, it's just like these long shots where you're just kind of like hear the desert, and things just linger a little too long. And I like that. But it's not for everyone.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying I need this to be action, action, action all the time, but like, and you shouldn't like compare every movie to this, but we mentioned The Godfather.
Yeah.
The Godfather Part 2, which is my favorite of the series, is 3 hours and 40 minutes long. Which that's a full day. That is a quite time commitment. But like, and it's not like it's a rapid-paced movie, but it never feels like there's moments in here that are just a waste of time.
Yeah, I get you.
Why are we focusing on this? Let's move. Come on.
Yeah. And I would agree to that. Like, I guess a movie that I can think of that's probably about that long is the final Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King, which also, it's certainly not like just action all the way through, but it does it doesn't do what this movie does, which is just like linger on just anything. Actually, one scene that comes to mind in this movie that maybe was a little long, that phone is ringing for a long time. I don't know if you remember that, but when the guy has the phone strapped to his arm, and
at the funeral scene,
it's for yeah. when I rewatched it, it was just yesterday, and I was like doing something while that scene was going, and I just heard a phone ringing for, it felt like 5 minutes, like, and I was just like, is Batman gonna answer the phone? Like, so there's stuff like that where I kind of agree. I mean, you could argue it's a lot. It's tension building, and like that's one of the things that gives you anxiety waiting for the next thing to happen. But yeah, there are definitely scenes like that.
I don't remember if I remember it, because it's been a while since I've seen it, and unlike you, I've only seen it once. I would have watched it a second time because, like, there's another Batman movie on HBO Max, but we live in a world where there's a bunch of Superman Loises I gotta get caught up
yeah,
on.
for sure.
So, I remember watching the movie where, in the funeral scene where the car crashes through, they're at church, right?
Yes.
I just remember thinking, God, this car is taking a long time to get to this church, because Bruce is looking, and it's just like, all right, when's the car going to hit the church? Where is it?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
I mean that is the exact scene that, like, what I'm talking about happens like 2 minutes later. It's after the car crashes in. Things do crawl very slowly during that whole sequence, which again is like not necessarily a bad thing to me. It is what it is.
Yeah, so this just reminded me of something, because I need to bring it up. It's not really about the movie, but it's just about fans online. Because whenever I see someone comments that they didn't like the movie, the weak-minded response is, "Oh, well, you just like Marvel movies. You need the humor all the time." Right. To which, if there's anyone like, I gotta say, number one, have you ever listened to this show before? Like,
yeah, we don't listen.
Like how Star Wars fans hate Star Wars. I am a Marvel fan who hates the MCU. And number two, like, I think Spider-Man No Way Home is a better movie than this. But, my favorite superhero franchise is right now in terms of live action? I bet you know what it is. What? Like, it's bar none. Like,
movie, you said?
Franchise. Live action franchise.
Ongoing?
Yeah, right now. Currently being made right now. It's Superman Lois.
Oh, I thought you, okay. I thought you meant movie. Okay.
Yeah, I had to encompass an overall franchise.
Got it. Okay.
I like Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man No Way Home. But Superman Lois is on a different level to everything else being made right now. Like, Oh, by the way, I gotta mention this one thing. Happened on Superman and Lois. Because this show has made me realize, like, I never thought I'd say this about other actors besides Christopher Reeve and Tom Welling, but Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tobuck, they are now tied with them as my favorite Superman Lois actors. There's this great scene, and it kind of goes back to like our No Way Home special where you talked about that scene where Toby had to stop Tom from killing Goblin, and all he could do was like a facial expression.
Yeah.
There's like this great moment because in the show, like one of the main antagonists is there's a leader of a cult who has like a gem thing where she can travel to an alternate universe or whatever. But like she's getting people into a cult. And one of the people she gets is Lois's sister, Lucy. And they try to get to the alternate dimension. There's a portal opens and a bunch of the cult's followers die, except for the cult leader. And there's a moment where they find out that Lucy was going to go with the cult, and everyone thinks Lucy might be dead. And there's this scene where Lois is in her sister's apartment rummaging through everything, and Superman is there. And like Lois is panicking, like she can't have gone, like she would have left a message behind. And you just like anytime Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois Lane is just like upset or something, you feel bad for her. You're like, God, this feels real. Like, is this acting? This is real. And like Tyler as Superman, like he only has like a few like lines, and like where he says Lois, and like he can only just be there to comfort her. But like from his expression, like he doesn't think Lucy survived. And to me, that was just like such a standout scene in the show. Yeah, but let's talk about Batman now. We're not talking about Metropolis. Well, it takes place in Smallville, but
yeah.
All right, so that is our Spider-Man one. Let me get this. Okay. All right, so for me, the movie is very overstuffed with multiple competing plot lines. So we have Batman versus the Riddler, Batman and Catwoman versus Falcone, and then in the middle, we have Batman learning about his parents' throne, and it didn't feel like the movie had a clear focus or even an A, B, C plot. Like how in The Office you have the A plot, which focuses on Michael, and then B plot, which focuses on Jim and Dwight or something, and then C plot, which could focus on like Phyllis or something. It never felt like the movie had a total focus on what it was trying to do. And instead, we had these three different threads where we were constantly like kind of jumping back and forth between them. It never felt like the threads were very well told. Like the Riddler story, just And then I think maybe the Catwoman, well, maybe the one with Bruce's parents was probably the best told one. But then we're going in with about Catwoman, about her friend and Falcone, and it just felt like it was so overstuffed. It didn't have a clear focus, and I would say it has an overstuffed problem like Iron Man 2 and Avengers Age of Ultron had. It had too many plot lines, too much tried to be crammed into that 3-hour runtime, and because there was so much crammed in, none of the main plot lines really worked.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, like I think with movies like Iron Man 2 and stuff, like I think that really doesn't mesh well with the genre. To me, this just the way all of this information was just being revealed one after the other in sort of a nonlinear way, to me just felt more like the nature of a mystery and revealing information gradually. It never struck me as separate plot lines or separate information. It all felt like more and more information was being added to my arsenal of information, helping me try and figure out what's going on. There's one thing I could definitely add to. Maybe I'll use this as the launching point of one of the things I wasn't sure about, which is that there was part of me like that felt like there's maybe a little bit of anticlimacticness to the end, which is that where I kind of felt like a lot of this information was being revealed, and the ending, Batman really just kind of patched a leak on one small problem, which was saving those people from that arena.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that was supposed to be the climax. Okay, well, good time, but that wasn't the most exciting part of the movie. It could have been a result of just mystery after mystery, like information being revealed slowly, gradually over the whole thing, all these plot threads, and it added to the intrigue and mystery of it in a very positive way for me, where it felt all interconnected and it was all part of Gotham as a character, and that was really well done. But I just don't know that there was really anywhere to go with it at the end of this movie. Like it felt like it felt like there were some incompleted threads. In some ways positive, because it was kind of a good bummer. It was like, I feel bleak. I feel upset. Ultimately, I would say that in this movie, Batman kind of lost. There's hopefulness, but he kind of lost. And
how did he lose?
Well, he didn't stop the Riddler's last attack.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I really think in this movie the villain won, because the Riddler, his whole goal was to do that giant terrorist attack at the end, which he did, and he flooded the town. Batman just saved that single room of people from drowning. Like, he pulled them out, and then we're on to the next scene. And like, I think they had to come up with some way to end it that made Batman I think that like, I would consider climax scene serves more as like showing that Batman as a character is like starting to offer a glimmer of hope to the people of Gotham. Like, he's not just scary. Like, these people saw that like he's reaching out a hand to help them, and that maybe that means there's some hope for that Batman feels as well that he can do something. But ultimately, for this particular case, with how like kind of amateur this Batman really was, I think he lost, because like the Riddler lured him in to meet the person he's the biggest fan of, which is Batman. He did not stop the massive bombing. Like, it happened. That was him losing. Like, there was no bigger thing that was stopped. That was the biggest attack of the movie, and it wasn't stopped at all.
Yes, it felt like when I think about it, it felt like the final end of like the Riddler's attack was just kind of thrown in because, like, okay, we need to have some type of action scene at the end.
Oh, I feel that way about the saving people, that like in some twisted way, and they'd never end a superhero movie like this. I actually think that there's something compelling about the fact that the Riddler was caught, and it felt like bested, and he still got his way because his bigger plot of exploding all these vans succeeded, and he kept Batman away from that by like meeting up with him. So I feel like that's really the final big, like, in a way that's the climax of the story, the situation, but like they can't end the movie like that with just like the Riddler bombing and flooding the city. They need to show
be a little bit too much sequel bait, because I do think I know what the sequel is going to be, and I think what Riddler did is going to have ramifications in the sequel.
Yeah. And so like it would be too much sequel bait. I think they needed some way to end this movie with Batman doing something heroic. And so the saving people from the floodedness, like it felt like such a small thing in the scheme. Like the whole city's flooded. You're just like picking these people out of the water. Really.
Oh yes. Could have used a bat raft or something.
Yeah. So that was really it. There was a feeling of incompleteness, but I thought about it and I understand why it feels that way. Yeah. That's all on that.